I said, let me go home and think about it.
Mm.
I think I probably burned rubber for 21 miles.
Were
to
you
get to
just
the
like
house.
screaming in the car, playing music really loud?
You know what I said?
Yeah.
Big Daddy's home. Big Daddy's home. Big Daddy's made it. I'm like, I just basically doubled my salary in negotiation. I'm thinking I'm on top of the world. Welcome to the Small Business Safari, where I help guide you to avoid those traps, pitfalls, and dangers that lurk when navigating the wild world of small business ownership. I'll share those gold nuggets of information and invite guests to help accelerate your ascent to that mountaintop of success. It's a jungle out there, and I want to help you traverse through the levels of owning your own business that can get you bogged down and distract you from hitting your own personal and professional goals. So strap in, adventure team, and let's take a ride through the safari and get you to the mountaintop.
Chris, it's our second podcast.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Number 2, we made it to 2. Woo!
Number 2.
Here we go.
Last podcast, we were talking about your background. And there's 2 reasons. Number 1, we need to establish a little bit of a baseline of credibility because we are going to be dropping some awesome bombs of business knowledge on people. But the other reason is everybody has a story, and you have this journey, and you have these influences in your life, your personal experiences, your parents, your mentors, your friend. And when you look back on it, you see that what you have become is as a result of all these influences and these experiences that you've had. And it shapes who you are. And I think when we get to the point where we find out how you ended up becoming a successful entrepreneur and an author, we're going to see where all that came from as we unpack a little bit about your backstory. So you were at Accenture when we left off last time.
Yep. So I was at Accenture. You actually said something that was really poignant for me because I just heard this line, and I think it's just important for all of us to know. The experiences shape who you become, but the evaluation of your experiences shape who you can become. And I thought that was really good. I had that line laid out to me just the other week. The evaluation of the experiences.
Meaning what?
Meaning if you look back on the experience you had and take those gold nuggets out of them, that it's going to help you become even better.
So it's along the lines of, when you have an employee who screws something up.
I've had a few.
Yeah. You can yell at them. What good does that do? It makes you feel better. Or what can we learn from this? Is that kind of what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, the evaluation of the experience. And when the guy said that like that, I'm like, man, I wrote that down. I said, that's so good. But
that wasn't me who said it. I just sort of reminded you of it.
Which reminds me of another thing that we're going to put this out again on a later podcast on how do you reward employees. And I had this great idea.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. And it wasn't even my idea. I just told you about somebody else's idea. And you totally stole it.
I did totally steal it. And then I told you back, I was like, hey, what a great idea.
Yeah, you're telling me about it. I'm the one who... Yeah. I have this effect on people.
You do.
I influence them, but they don't remember that it came from me.
That's hilarious.
Oh, my God. All right.
You're at Accenture. Before I met you, I'm at Anderson Consulting.
Anderson.
Still not Accenture.
Yeah.
And I'm learning. They're polishing the rough edges. They're beating the absolute dog shit out of me because what you hear now is probably the most polished I've ever been. Actually, I was better, but...
I'm sure I've seen you button up beautifully.
I can button up. That's true. But if I'm really being me, it's you and me, which we always
got the Italian coming out of you.
That's fun.
That's fun, Chris.
That's fun, Chris. Yeah, Chris is fun. So I'm at Anderson. I'm traveling a ton. I now have a daughter, so I have a family, but I'm traveling all over the place. I learned so many valuable lessons there. I learned that age doesn't matter, experience and
it's an attitude, right?
And attitude make a big difference. When I first got there, my first boss was 2 years my junior. He's the one who had to come in and let me know I had a horrible way of handling employees and clients at the bank, and that I needed to work on the way I worked with them, to work on my relationships. And I needed to learn to network, and I needed to learn to do other things that were important. And my first job for him was to take minutes at a meeting. And I am my
That's
attitude.
that's the Peter principle right there. You rose to your level of incompetence.
Yep, exactly. So that's
Now,
where I started.
But I have to interrupt you.
Yep.
So what I've known about people from the North, and especially Italians, is they've got this sort of rough edge and they kind of lean into it a little bit, but inside they're kind of mushy. It's like, they just have this gushy interior. So once you crack through that crust, you've got some of the kindest, most generous, most giving, most loving people on the planet.
That's my family.
That is your family. So what is it that, and I've had employees that you've had to coach on being rough. And you were talking about you were rough on clients and you're rough on customers.
Right.
So there's the, okay, I have to be nice because I have to. And then there's the, well, maybe I should be nice and courteous because it makes sense from a career standpoint. But then there's just sort of who you are. And so at this point, were you acting that way because that's who you thought you should be? Because it's not who you are.
I was trying to fit their mold. And
what you thought their mold was.
Well, at least what I thought their mold was. Very, very well said. And I was trying really hard. And if you've ever tried to act the way you think somebody expects you to act, but you're not being authentic yourself, has anybody ever felt natural? No. Have you ever done it really well? No, because we can't, right? We can't fit that mold. And so I spent the first 2 or 3 months at Anderson Consulting trying to be like them and get the suits and act like them and be buttoned up and be a banker, and I couldn't. So the way I had to work on it was to become authentic was what makes us mushy as Italians, or as you put it, is once I got to know you.
You've got a gooey center.
We do.
Yeah.
I do. I definitely do. Once I got to know you and you're a human being, and I knew a little bit more about Dottie having 6 grandchildren, and those were the apples of her eye, and that was everything. The whole reason she's still working was to take care of them.
Right.
Because her daughter couldn't. And you start to hear that, you're a little softer on Dottie, but you still need things done. So you can't be soft. You have to be disciplined and hold the line in business, especially. And you and I have talked about this in the past. I mean, when are you supposed to be an asshole, and when do you have to be the bad cop? And
right.
But we all want to be the good cop sometimes. So how does that work? And yeah, I think for me, what became more authentic was once I got to know people, I could be more real with them. And it's not that I get to go out there and smoke cigarettes and drink beer with them. It was just that I knew that they were people, and they knew I was people, and they knew I was real, and I was trying to get something accomplished. And I'm a pretty high driving guy, and
they'll move mountains for you if they think you care about them just a little.
Yeah. And my competitive nature meant that my bar was really high anyway. I played sports all my life. And so the bar I was setting for everybody was higher anyway. But I think that's a big part of it.
All right. So they're polishing the rough spots off of you, and you have
one edge at a time. And I would say the John Legend song, all your roughs, all your edges and curves. I had a lot of edges.
Do you want to sing a couple of bars?
Again,
No.
English accent and singing, both.
Yeah, it's going to have to come out because it's so bad that it's really entertaining.
It is so bad.
Yeah, and it's the exact same as your Irish accent.
I could do a Canadian accent in a heartbeat.
It'll be the same one.
Yeah. So were they polishing edges? They were. And I was traveling a ton, but I was also learning. I was learning about banking. I was learning a lot about how to deal with people who didn't think like you did. And I learned respect for the individual. And I learned those things that later on, running your own business, you and I will get to that, I'm sure. But our collective experiences made us so much better at running our business when we got to that point. And
yeah, I was the same way growing up. I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I always wanted to be in business for myself, but I had no idea how to do it. Not only that, I didn't have the money to do it at the time.
Right.
But it wasn't until you just got purged by the fire of corporate America.
I tell you, the thing that was good was I was learning. I was learning a ton. I was swimming with sharks, and I realized that these guys were really good. They were high performing, type A, just 100% going to go with you, right? And I learned a lot, and I was starting to make more money. And money, as they say, is the root of all evil. But
no,
money
it's
is
a root of all evil. It's not the root of all
right?
evil. Yeah.
Not the A. Thank you for quoting it correctly. I missed it. I started to make money. So traveling wasn't a big deal because I was making money, and I got that really cool thing, which was the dubious status of frequent flyer miles.
Oh,
you had those too, right?
Yeah, you get the diamond platinum.
Oh, I was Uber status on United Airways back in the day. I had Marriott Uber status. I could take my families on great vacations. I was making it happen. Of course, I never took them anywhere.
No,
because I was traveling all the time.
You were becoming daddy.
Yeah. I was on my way to becoming daddy. So it felt good.
Yeah.
So we're in the suits, we're on per diems, we're on expense accounts, you're traveling, you're working on some very high level stuff. Nations Bank became Bank of America. I was on that merger wagon.
Was your entrepreneurial dream kind of fading a little bit because of the success you were seeing?
Excuse me. Yes, I think it was not fading, but it definitely was put in park. It was priority number 10 when they say that you should only have 3 priorities. It really fell down. I wasn't evaluating opportunities. I wasn't on the lookout for things anymore. I had a new baby, family at home. I'm traveling. I'm working. I'm working so crazy that I can't even see straight.
And where are you now? Are you in?
So I live in Charlotte, North
Okay.
Carolina, and I'm traveling to Jacksonville and Wichita and Henderson, Nevada, and back in Charlotte.
Okay.
And so traveling quite a bit. But yeah, you asked that question. Now I'm sitting here kind of rolling my eyes going, none of it happened. I wasn't thinking about it because at Anderson Consulting at the time, you could become a partner. And that partner idea scratched that itch of becoming an entrepreneur for me.
Well, and you've got these people investing in you or beating you about the head and shoulders to turn you into something. And suddenly you're starting to see the fruit of that, the reward of it.
I was moving up relatively quickly, never as quickly as anybody wants, because, again, we talk about any generation. Our parents always said this about us, and we'll say this about our kids, and their kids will say it about their kids. We always wanted something for nothing. We always wanted to move faster. We always wanted to get up faster.
Yeah.
Remember, I was 2 years my first boss's senior, and yet he was my boss and always was above me. Of course, he was one of the most impressive guys I've ever worked for or with, and he has gone on to do incredible things. So age didn't matter, and I learned that.
Mm-hmm.
It was about what you did with what you had. And here I'm sitting at Anderson, and then they say, oh, we're going to change the name, and we're going to change the way we do business. I'm like, uh-oh.
That's a seismic proclamation.
It was huge. We're going to change the name. The guy who ran the branding effort for Anderson Consulting.
That's like Coke saying we're not going to be Coke anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah. I mean, I knew guys who said, I'm quitting tomorrow because if I can't put Anderson, because I want to have Anderson Consulting on my resume when I go to my next job.
Wow.
And you're starting to think, oh my God, I came here for Anderson Consulting so I can go to my next job. Because Anderson Consulting on the resume was a gold standard. That was like...
And you didn't just assume that the new name would have the same power?
No, not at all.
Wow.
In fact, you thought it would be the worst. So we split from Arthur Anderson, where Anderson Consulting, the guy who does the branding effort, happens to be in our office in Charlotte. I didn't do any work with him, but he got to do a presentation for our company, and he taught us a ton. He said, branding is a war of attrition. You have to find a name that's going to work globally. You have to find a website that's still available. And this is back in 1999. Think about it today.
Yeah.
Trying to find a website. Find a name that's not offensive in other languages. If you
Nova.
Nova, that's the one I was going to use too. Who was the genius who came up in Detroit, Michigan and said, we're going to go Nova.
Yeah.
And we're going to sell it in Mexico.
Yeah.
What does it say in Spanish?
Won't go.
Don't go. That's right. Nova. So he starts telling us all. He's doing this presentation. And then he said, you have to realize that the name is an empty vessel. It is a rocket ship, going back to the theme. I'm still enamored with space travel. And I figure those are the absolute best engineers in the world. And nobody can get somebody from the moon to back. He starts talking about a spaceship. It's an empty vessel that you have to fill up. And if you think about both of our careers as we started businesses, and you went the franchise route and I did not, did our companies have any brand recognition in the space we were in and in the markets we were in?
So when I started with Enterprise, we were the 4th largest rental car company in the nation, and nobody knew it. As a matter of fact, I went through a headhunter, and they presented me with this opportunity with this company. It's a great company, fast growing, really successful. I'd never heard of them. And I'm like, there's no way. I don't care what their comp package is like, what their career path is like. I've never heard of them.
So you started with Enterprise when they were the 4th largest.
They were the 4th largest, and nobody knew about them.
Okay.
And I remember I got to the point in senior leadership where, and we didn't care because all of our business was earned the hard way. We'd go out and make sales calls and you get referrals and that kind of thing. But then we kind of got to the point where we owned that market. And so we started going after the corporate market and the retail market and the air travel. And I was privileged to be in some of those conversations where we were going for branding. And they'd already done all the studies that when you asked, you do the surveys and nobody's heard of us. Name 3 rental car companies and it's Hertz, Avis, National, blah, blah, blah. Enterprise wouldn't even be mentioned. And so these commercials, and they still occasionally run the same commercials today as they ran at the very beginning, which was, hello, I'm at the shop. Can you pick me up? That ad was designed to just get people to, when they looked at the yellow pages, if you remember the yellow pages, to go, yeah, I've heard of them. That's all we wanted. It wasn't even a call to action. It was just awareness. And I'm like, really? We're spending gazillions just for awareness? But that's how you had to slowly, set the building blocks to, first of all, you have to make people kind of aware that you exist so that suddenly they go, yeah, I guess that could be an option to, hey, I'm going to pick up the phone and call them.
Isn't that amazing? Because those principles apply for every small business.
Right.
What you just talked about, you have to spend a gazillion dollars just for awareness. But in the beginning, when you start a business, you're just trying to get that phone to ring if you're in B2C, or get that first transaction if you're B2B. And all my money has got to go on that. And I can't be spending a gazillion dollars just for awareness.
It seems like you're like throwing money into the abyss.
Oh my God. And we'll talk about that at total length down the road, because we went from those huge corporate budgets to these really small personal budgets of starting your own business.
No budget?
Of no budget.
Right.
So back to the Accenture thing. So the guy says, hey, it's a vessel, right? You're like, yada, 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 what the heck, get out of here, right? Now, in 2021, Accenture is considered the leading Big Five consultancy, whatever you want to call them. And after we had left, I use the word independent, Arthur Andersen got caught in the Enron scandal and basically has now been dissolved completely. And so by serendipity, we had changed names to Accenture. You knew, I already told you, some of the guys I knew left because they wanted to have Andersen Consulting on their resume. And here I am at Accenture. But they changed the model, changed the name, and they said, well, we're going to go public, and here's what we're going to do. And one of the awesomest things that ever happened was I got to go to a meeting, and it was in Charlotte. We hadn't left. Go to a meeting. They rolled out a calculator that because we're going public and all these partners are making $1 million a year or more, and I clearly was not making $1 million a year or more. I was still a manager, still trying to work my way.
You felt like you could be on that path.
But I was on my way, so I was scratching that entrepreneur.
All right, so calculator.
They give us a calculator based on the go forward rate, based on what you can do, and here's how many shares you're going to have based on level that you're going to get. When I got done running the calculator, I was going to go buy my own private island next to Richard Branson. I shit you not.
Did you go home and tell your wife, thank you for circling and tapping on the circle?
I am going to get my own island in the BVI with the numbers. A year later, same meeting, comes back, partner comes out and says, only we can give away billions of dollars and screw it up because the calculator was wrong.
Oh my God.
Yeah. My private island is now worth, after 21 years, is worth $70,000. I'm not exactly buying a private island for that.
Yeah.
But I still have it. It's good. It's still money I still have. I'm very excited about eventually using it, but it's still not my private island. So they screwed that up. So now I'm starting to like, okay, wait a minute. What's going on here? But the jobs I'm working on are pretty cool. So I'm working at Ford Motor Credit now, and I'm starting to travel all over. My wife gets an opportunity. We moved to Atlanta. I'm still traveling 5 days a week, 4 days a week, because they expect you there all the time. And I'm working for Ford Motor Credit because nobody from the Southeast ever wanted to go back up to Detroit. And I'm like, I'm going home. In fact, my daughter's first business trip was to Detroit, Michigan to go with me. So I flew in, dropped her with my in-laws, and took off and went to work over in Dearborn, Michigan. It was so cool.
That's great.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So I love doing it. But we were doing commercial processes and call center implementations. And there, going back to where you do them, you do them everywhere. So it's Greenville, South Carolina, kind of close to where I lived in Charlotte. But then the next one was Henderson, Nevada. Then the next one was in Edmonton, Canada. And from Atlanta to Edmonton is no direct flight. The way you go is to Minneapolis, and that's halfway. And then you fly the rest of the way.
Nobody has any idea how far north Edmonton is.
So how far north is it?
It is so ridiculously far north. So I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, which is way up in the upper left corner of the U.S. And Edmonton was as far north of Portland as L.A. was south.
In L.A., if you were driving from Portland to L.A., how long would that take?
Oh, my God. It is a long. I'm trying to think. San Francisco was 10 hours, so probably 18 hours.
18 hours.
Yeah.
So you'd have to drive 18 hours north to get to Edmonton. Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
And I've made that drive. And I mean, you see some really amazing things like herds of elk in the Canadian Rockies. I saw my one and only Aurora Borealis up that way.
Yep.
But then you get there and there's this sparkling city. And Calgary is just a stunning city that just when you're driving to it, you know, you've got these prairies and the Canadian Rockies to your left, and you're driving through the prairie, and all of a sudden this massive oil-fueled skyline comes out of the ground, and it's just like, how do we not know about this?
I feel like now we should get sponsored by the Imperial Railroad.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they had those amazing spots, amazing hotels in each of the areas.
Yes.
I get to stay in that one in Edmonton.
Oh, wow.
So the Imperial Railroad needs to, or the hotel.
The province of Alberta.
They should all sponsor this
That's
podcast because now we're telling everybody you got to go to Edmonton because I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Once I got there, I loved it.
Oh, breweries, the restaurants.
The people amazing.
Friendly, no crime. I mean,
right.
You know.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Unbelievable.
Unfortunately, you said 18 hours to get from Portland.
And you did have a little kid at the time, right?
And I had a little kid at the time. I felt like every flight was about 18 hours.
Yeah.
So in consulting, I pulled the card, which was, please get me off the road. I know this may be career suicide, but I've got to be home because I have a new baby coming too, baby number 2.
And you said maybe career suicide. It is definitely career suicide, right?
Right. So it was career suicide.
Yeah.
I knew what I was doing.
Okay.
It was like, okay, I've got to do this, but I have a family. We moved into a great house in a golf course community, had a lot of trappings that were very luxurious.
Boat.
I'm still intoxicated. I'd sold the boat when we left from Charlotte, but we were still in the golf course. But of course, we got a golf cart because we had to be cool and make a lot of money.
God forbid you walk.
No, that's too far. It was too much exercise. So I pulled the card and I started to work at SunTrust Banks because they had the same problem. They had a commercial credit process. They had a mainframe that they needed to collapse. All the stuff I had done at Bank of America now and Ford Motor Credit, and so I had a great job and I got to live in town. So Big Daddy's starting to happen. Big Daddy's home. I now can come home every night. Now, every night was get up at 5:30, leave the house by 6, get home by 7, maybe 8. I should have just been on the road the whole time anyway.
Right.
But I was
You're
working.
sleeping in your bed.
But I'm sleeping in my bed. I get to see my babies every night. I get to see my wife. We're family and kept going.
You're eating at Bones and Chops and Morton's.
Remember when Atlanta used to have this magazine that would rate all the restaurants to say these are the top 100 restaurants in the city?
Right.
We bought that. We didn't buy it. They gave you the magazine at the time. We went and we knocked off 7 of the top 10. You bet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I remember my wife used to not want to hear me complain, I got to go to Ruth's Chris for a dinner tonight, or I've got to go to the Palm, that kind of thing. And it's like, but, after a while, you just can't even choke it down.
So here in Atlanta, Bones, you brought that up, is an amazing restaurant, which Bones should be supporting us too.
They should.
Because we got to go there on the corporate ticket and got the seafood tower. And if you've ever been to Bones and got the seafood tower,
I've never had the
you
seafood
know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know that one, you'll know Mastro's Seafood Tower because Mastro's is another great one. And this was the seafood tower to beat all seafood towers because we had a big group going. And I got to eat high on the hog and I got to do all that
the dry aged ribeye at Bones was my deal.
And then I would, after we would go to these places, I would go, we get a babysitter and my wife and I would go try them out later. And we would not be doing the seafood tower when it was on my ticket, but when it was the company ticket, right?
So you've arrived.
I had arrived. I bought a little Mercedes.
Yeah.
The little one. Didn't get the big one yet. Hang on. So I'm intoxicated, right? I'm in the dream.
Entrepreneurial fantasies are
still not evaluating anything. Still have that piece of paper that I wrote when I was 17 years old.
You hadn't looked at that paper in a while.
I hadn't looked at that paper in a long time. Here I am, 31, 32 years old. Haven't looked at that sucker, but man, I am doing things that my parents could only dream of doing.
And how about comparing to your other friends who at one point were making 20 grand more than your...
So now I'm clearly have eclipsed my engineer buddies.
So they can suck it.
They can suck it. And you know how to prove it? I took all those points I told you I was racking up, Marriott points, and we went to the Ritz-Carlton in St. Thomas.
Nice.
I flew my in-laws in to watch the kids. My father-in-law started working on my basement. And that starts the trip on this is that I let him do all that work on my basement that I've been working on all week on the weekends because we bought a house. I had my mother-in-law watching the kids. My wife and I go to the Ritz-Carlton on St. Thomas. And that's right. Big Daddy is there.
Big Daddy's there. Now, let me ask you.
I'll have a Bahama Mama. That's right.
So you are Big Daddy. You're making all this money. You're going to the Ritz in St. Thomas or wherever, and you're still doing your basement by yourself?
Yeah.
It's just because you like working with your hands.
Yes. So
interesting.
Yeah. So that was, again, life experience.
Because most people that get to that level, all the A players in North Atlanta, they don't even know which end of the hammer to hold. And yeah, the last thing that they're going to do, the reason why they make all that money is so that they don't have to get a callus.
I was doing all of it. I'd redone my master bathroom. I had redone my daughter's room. I was working on the basement next because it was unfinished to get that all built out so the kids would have a playroom and I could watch football while the kids were playing. But yeah, no, I was still doing all that stuff myself because I just couldn't bring. I think one of my friends said this is the best way. I think we're all cheap about something. You know, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care if you have a private jet, you can fly anywhere you want. You're Richard Branson, you own your own island, right next to the island that I was supposed to have that I did not get from Accenture. We're all cheap about something.
That is so well said, because back when I was, in my big corporate days, I would spend whatever on a meal. I mean, I didn't care how much it was. And it wasn't so much with the bottle of wine, but I would spend whatever it was. And I mean, it would be stupid. I would pay whatever to play a round of golf. But you send me to Walmart to pick out a toaster, and I'm going to be paralyzed in that aisle between the $20 toaster, the $30 toaster, and the $40. So I'm like, well, why is this one worth $20? You're exactly right. That's hilarious.
How about bottled water?
Oh, I think that's the biggest ripoff.
Right?
Yeah. That and the wedge salad. I don't know how you feel about the wedge salad.
It's an iceberg lettuce. It's iceberg lettuce with a little bit of stuff on it. That's not a $10 salad.
No, and they hit it with a cleaver 2 times to quarter it, and then they put a bunch of bacon bits on it and some freaking blue cheese, and then they charge. And I had friends, it's the wedge salad. I'm like, really?
That takes
no skill whatsoever.
Zero. And an iceberg lettuce is probably the tastelessness of all the lettuces out there.
It makes my skin crawl. It's too crunchy. Anyway, but I digress.
No, we're good. That's exactly what we do. We're all cheap about something.
Yes.
Send Alan into Walmart, and he will come out 4 hours later with the best toaster for the best value.
Yeah, it won't be the $40 toaster. It won't be the 20. I mean, I may as well just go to the middle one and get it, because I'm going to sit there and
But the next time you go to Bones, seafood tower, please.
Yeah. Exactly right. Dry aged ribeye, Pittsburgh with béarnaise on the side, please. All right, so you're Big Daddy.
I'm Big Daddy. I'm rolling.
And
I'm on the partner track.
But you're not today. You're Big Daddy in a different way. You own your own business. You're an author. There had to be an event.
And on that note, shameless plug. Episode number 2. This episode is sponsored by The Zoo to the Wild, a great story and your guide to entrepreneurial freedom and wealth. It is my journey from leaving corporate America and starting my own business. Hopefully it will help inspire you to do the same. And if you've already done it, go out there and take a look at this book. Because if you're already in the entrepreneurial wild and doing what you're doing, we'll talk a lot about achieving operational excellence. And I'll leave you with a lot of gold nuggets. Now, Alan, where were we?
There had to have been a catalyst.
There was a catalyst. So I was at Accenture and I was making the move. I felt like I was on the way. And then I got a call to go talk to the chief risk officer of SunTrust Banks, where I was working. I thought, I took my order book with me. I was going to make partner. If I make a couple more sales, they'll put me on the partner track and I'll be able to get in the next promotion cycle and eventually get to make that $1 million.
Don't tell me, is this a Joe Pesci scene where he thought he was going to be made and instead he got whacked?
I did not get whacked.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. Yeah, no, this was not Goodfellas. Although there's probably a movie in here because I think it would be like Dumb and Dumber meets Goodfellas. So Dumb and Dumber walks in, and I think I'm going to make it, right? I'm going to make my partner. She comes in. Let's talk. Sandra, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to do? And she starts telling me, well, I need to transform the commercial loan operations environment. I have a letters of credit department that's not doing so well. And my middle office in corporate banking isn't working. I'm like, great, I'll put together a proposal. I'll do that. And she looks at me and she says, Chris, hang on a minute. I'm talking about, I'd like to hire you. And I said, well, I work for Accenture. She goes, yeah, I'm aware of that. She goes, but I want to hire you. I said, well, I have a partner that I report to. She goes, I've already cleared it with him. I said, okay, so you're talking about you want to hire me. She goes, yes. And this is what makes a great leader. And she started to, now Chris is catching up right quickly, but slowly, because if you know Chris's history.
There's a pattern.
There's a pattern.
Yeah.
Email, no. Computer controlled machines.
God,
no. Oh, can't do that.
Parts. No. Don't you think? Yeah. Anyway, okay. So
off I go. So she says, this is what I want you to do. I want you to lead this group. And I want you to help us transform the bank because we're a small bank today. We're actually a large super regional, but we act like a small bank. We want you to help us get to the next level. I said, okay. And she says, how much would you like? And we all know in negotiation, what don't you do, Alan? What don't you do when somebody says, how much?
Blink. You don't give him a number.
What did I do?
Give him a number.
Gave her a number.
Yeah.
Bang, done. Gave her a number. She goes, looks back at me and says, done, 10% more. When can you start?
And did you immediately go, dang it, I should have said something higher?
I sat there. I'm still in the stupor because the number I gave her, I felt, was very high. It was a salary, and she gave me 10% more. I said, let me go home and think about it. I think I probably burned rubber for 21 miles.
Were you just like screaming in the car, playing music really loud?
You know what I said?
Yeah.
Big Daddy's home. Big Daddy's home. Big Daddy's made it. I'm like, I just basically doubled my salary in negotiation. I'm thinking I'm on top of the world. Made it all happen. Truth of the matter was, it was a great number. What I didn't know in my complete naivete, what's that word? Naivete?
I'm going to go ahead and let you
I'm an idiot.
twirl on that. Yeah.
I get the offer. The offer says, here's your base salary. Here's your sign-on bonus. Here's your stock options. Here is your vested stock. All this stuff that I had no idea companies had. So my package, my total comp package, was actually twice what my salary was. And I was negotiating off the salary. I had no clue.
Freaking genius.
I am pinky in the brain genius. So I did resign from Accenture, and I had my partner's blessing. His name was Vic Ryden. He was a great mentor of mine and shaper of my thoughts and a big polisher of my rough edges.
You've had some really good people that have shaped you.
Yeah, I really, looking back on it.
And what was her name?
Sandra Jansky is the one who hired me.
Yeah.
And she was, after everything that was done, was the best boss I ever had. The best boss I ever had. And she saw things in people and she expected things. And I think a lot of times women in business feel like they have to be that type A bitch to get ahead. And she had just enough of the right type A and type B.
You wouldn't mess with her.
You wouldn't mess with her, but she also had that gooey inside.
Yeah.
But you had to get through that really tough outside. But she was also really smart. And I really, looking back on it, I never liked any boss I ever worked for at the time because in my head, I was still an entrepreneur. I just had given it up. I'm in the lotus flower world of, I'm just making so much money. I'm intoxicated.
You are totally intoxicated.
I was
Mr. Junkie. You're corporate junkie.
Yeah. So she hires me. And with that, we'll take a break. Let's go ahead and thank one of our sponsors. Are you in the home service business and train your employees to represent your company in the right way when they're taking care of customers? Are they providing a 110% customer experience? If you aren't getting those rave reviews that you expect or those repeat customers that you crave, then you need to get the homeserviceinstitute.com training programs. These training programs talk the language of your technician and help them figure out how to align your goals with their wants. Go ahead and check out the homeserviceinstitute.com and all of their training modules, and they will turn your employees into 110% customer experience providers. That's the homeserviceinstitute.com. And now let's get back to listening to what the guys have to say. Guys, we're back.
Sandra Jansky was the best boss she ever had. What was it about her that made her the best boss? What did you learn from her?
I love that she was quick to action. I love that she was quick to understand that she didn't need to have a meeting just to have a meeting.
Oh my God, we could talk about that forever.
Forever.
Most meetings are done so long after they're over. Anyway, go ahead.
She was so good at being efficient with people and time. And she could listen to the facts objectively and give you an answer. And she also had a compassionate side that would come out occasionally, but only when needed. And that was key because especially as a woman in a corporate world, they all feel like to get ahead, you got to be that type A bitch. Because if you're the lovable person in a male-dominated world, which SunTrust was not only just a male-dominated world, it was a white, Southern, male-dominated world, which is a whole nother culture in and of itself. And she was able to navigate that and get to where she is.
So it's interesting. I've worked for a lot of great people who are very influential in my life, and some of them are still mentors, but the best boss I ever had was a woman.
Really?
Yeah. And she was, again, like you said, in a male-dominated world, but serious as a heart attack about her business, extraordinarily professional. But what was so awesome was we had so much fun. And I think you don't have to be serious all the time to be successful. I think, I always said you either need to be making a lot of money or having a lot of fun to enjoy what you do. And what I would prefer to do is have a lot of fun making a lot of money. And she was the kind of person where, we laughed all day long, but we got so much work done. But I didn't care how long I was there because I was having such a good time. I worked my brains out hours longer than you would in any other job. But the thing that I felt like really made her special was I never once felt like anything I told her she would use against me. So it allowed me to say, hey, I'm not 100% sure about this, or I'm not comfortable with that, or I don't know if I have the ability to do this, or I'm confused about that. You've been in the corporate world long enough at this point to know, man, you start showing some weaknesses, and there are certain people that'll take advantage of it. Or It just gets written down on a little thing like, Lala Mia, I don't know if he's that smart because he keeps asking these questions. She never held it against you. And, there would be times where I'd be asked to do something I wasn't comfortable with, not unprofessionally, I just didn't know if I could do a good enough job with it. And she'd say, okay, well, let's sit down and talk about it. Let's see if I can figure out how to help you. Next thing you know, you're full of confidence and you go out and get the job done. It was an amazing trait. It's very interesting, both of us, best boss.
So Sandra was not that way. It was a different one for me, but it fed the itch.
Yeah.
So Sandra brought me in, and she was tough, but I was tougher. I'm 33 years old. I got that job that everybody covets. I'm going into a corner office. I have 400 people working for me, and I get to do a change transformation. I felt like all the skills I have built till that point were good, except I'm 33 years old. I inherited 9 direct reports.
That's a lot of reviews to write.
Right? A lot of reviews to write, and not one of them was within 15 years of my age. I'm the young hotshot, and they all know it's coming.
Yeah.
And old Buckshot Chris is walking in.
What's Opie going to tell me on my review?
Yeah, this ought to be really good. Yeah. And what I had with Sandra was she didn't micromanage me. She had my back, and she was giving me political ear cover that I did not realize I needed to have at the time.
She had you back. You had your back whether you knew it or not.
And that's what made her a great boss.
Yes.
She didn't need to have 1,000,000 hours of status meetings with me. She didn't need to hear a bunch of stuff. She needed to have the digest version of what I'm trying to get done and where I needed help. And once I figured that out, we worked really well together. So off I go. And I learned so many lessons. I bought the Peter Drucker books. I bought the Jim Collins book. I bought the Patrick Lencioni book.
You have just swallowed the Kool-Aid.
I am going all in because management and leadership, and which we'll talk about in a big way, because I know you've got a ton of gold nuggets to talk about there. But later on, we'll talk about more leadership. But I started reading and devouring those books. And I bought a book called The 100 Days. And that was, I needed 100 days to evaluate my team and figure out where I'm at and to do all that. And I've learned so many lessons there that I use today in my small business that were invaluable. And then
Let me guess. Corporate America rears its ugly head, because if Sandra were still there, you'd still be there.
And corporate America just absolutely, it didn't just rear its head, it absolutely slaughtered us. So in banking, as most people know, we get a lot of days off in America that people don't usually get, so we have banker's hours. And while I wasn't working banker's hours, I had to come in on a bank holiday on a special call. I get a call on my phone saying, please come into the office on Monday morning. I come in, look at it, and Ted Hepner, who is Sandra Jansky's boss, is there. He fired her. Because of a thing at the time called Sarbanes-Oxley, which in 2021, if this would have happened, would have been a rounding error. We'll make it up in the next earnings call. This was not a way to manage earnings, but in Sarbanes-Oxley in the world, it was trying to reel in the banks who were doing a little crazy stuff. And somebody had to get fired. And old Ted Hepner had a lot of money sitting on, he was about to retire, and he was the old Southern White Guard. And I watched it happen right in front of me. And I started to get really disillusioned and remember that where I'm at is still corporate America, and I'm not running my own business. And so it wasn't an epiphany. It was a reminder, and a sobering reminder that I just lost the best boss I'd ever worked for.
And it could be that the new person is going to be awesome because, you learn different things from different people.
And that's where I'm going. The new boss will be even better. So the new boss came from inside. And it was a guy that I got along with really well. And Carl was great. But the first thing he says when we get together is, Chris, I'm retiring within the next year because I'm at that age. And he saw this all happen too. And he had all that money waiting for him too. And he did not want to get caught up in this Sarbanes-Oxley world. And our bank was going through a huge transformation, of which I felt like I was on the tip of the spear. And that was feeding the entrepreneurial edge. And at least I was telling myself that as I was going on amazing golf trips with my boys and whining and dining and making all this money. And I started not that I have regular suits, Alan. I got custom made suits.
Yeah.
Cufflinks, made to fit, the whole thing.
What's the best golf course you played?
Best golf course I played ever?
Yeah.
Ever. I would say the one that I always look back on and go, wow, I'm so glad I got to play it, was TPC Sawgrass. But it was brutally hard. I did birdie 17.
Did you?
That's the only thing I can say. Best 107 I ever shot, but I birdied 17. I mean, wow. That was
I bogeyed 17.
Yeah.
And we were on our third thunderstorm delay. And it was to the point where it was getting dark and we were supposed to go back into the clubhouse, but we didn't. We kind of held. There was a little lightning shelter out there and they never gave us the siren to go back out on the course. But all of us were like, we're not leaving until we play 17. So I put the peg in the ground, put the ball on the tee, and I'm in the middle of my backswing, and this thunderclap goes off that's like right over my head. And I'm surprised I actually hit the ball. I just chunked it so bad it dribbles into the water in front of me. Drop another one down, hit it on the green, make the putt. Best four I've ever made.
That is the best four.
Yeah.
That's such a hard course. But back to SunTrust and being wined and dined and doing this. And I got Carl. And Carl is now my boss and he retires. And you're like, okay. But Carl looks at me and says, Chris, do you want to run commercial loan operations? I said, no, I want to keep moving because I'm entrepreneurial. I want to become the man, Do I want to be a CEO of a bank? To be determined. We'll figure that out. I'm not really sure. I don't know how to do that. But he says, I want you to go start doing this other job. And this other job was to do a large change effort within the bank. And I was going to be the credit liaison to this, where I had to interface with all the different factions across the bank, the commercial bank, retail bank, audit, finance, IT, all the things that go into a big corporate world. But I was now a project guy. I hired my replacement. I gave him the reins, and I go off to this thing. And it was the worst word in the world. It was called SERP. And you might as well add the ENT, because it was a freaking serpent. And I look back on that now and go, and those were becoming my, not epiphanies, but becoming my shaping of, wow, corporate America is just beating it right out of you.
Eventually, now corporate America can be great because you can make a lot of money. You've got the potential security, you've got the 401k, you've got the lifestyle that you can achieve. But for many people, it just slowly starts sucking your soul out of your body.
And you're willing to give that up. Back to the lotus flower and giving it up. You're willing to, right? Because I did. I was willing to give up the soul-sucking, becoming an entrepreneur. And here I was 33, now I'm 35. And I didn't do what I said I had to do on my paper. But I didn't look at that paper. I didn't look at the paper that said when I was 17 that by the time I'm 35, I'm going to have a manufacturing plant.
I forgot it was
50
35.
employees. And now I'm 35 years old, but I didn't look. Why didn't I look? Well, because I had custom suits. I was playing great golf courses. I was getting to eat at Bones or Mastro's or wherever you think is the best steakhouse around. I could go anywhere. We lived in a country club. We were building a house in the mountains on a lake. Daddy had the world.
But then you get these little events that just start happening.
And they just start happening. And you're trying to ignore them.
Yeah.
Because you want to. Mm-hmm. Right? You start looking away. Oh, don't look at that. No. Because you might have to go start it.
Right.
And then Carl retires. And you're like, well, where are you at? The next boss may be the best boss.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he comes.
And?
Guns a-blazing. Puts the book called The Cowboy Code down on his desk. And
is there literally a book called The Cowboy Code?
Oh, yeah. If you haven't seen it, The Cowboy Code, there are 10 principles.
Is it a Chris Lalomia thumbs up book?
It's a Chris Lalomia thumbs up book. Unfortunately, it was brought to you by my new boss. And so what do they call people from Massachusetts?
Massachusetts Indians?
Yeah. So we call them massholes. And if you're listening and you're from Massachusetts, you can prove me wrong and show me the other gooey.
My dad's from Massachusetts, but go ahead.
So I've just pissed off my co-host. But I'm going to stick with it because I need to own this. And as an entrepreneur, you need to own it. And this dude was a masshole. In my first meeting with him, he brings me into his office. The Cowboy Code is sitting on his desk. Not his desk, because in the banking world, big mahogany offices, we'd have couches, chairs, desks, adjoining bathrooms, and he had a coffee table between his couch and the chair he put me in. And the Cowboy Code was on the coffee table.
Let me guess, your chair was a little bit lower.
Just a little bit lower.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he says, Chris, I've been in this business for a long time. And I pay you a shitload of money. And I don't know what you do.
Man, that sounds exactly like the guy that drove me out of Enterprise. And interestingly, he wasn't a masshole, but his name was Dick.
Right. Perfect name. We all have them.
Yeah.
No offense to these guys.
No, total offense to Dick because he was a dick.
And he was.
Yeah.
And, so
this guy was a masshole, but they said the exact same thing. I don't know what you do, but I pay you
a shitload of money.
Yeah.
And what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you, sir. Can I have another?
So, not me. No, I doubled down. Start trying to explain to him what I do. We're digging my hole even further. So.
Because there's nothing you can say. It's just a total power play on their part.
Total power play. And this is the kind of guy that would do a desk check at 4:30 on Friday afternoon.
Oh, my God.
And I, again, was, now I didn't have 400 people working for me. I had only 6 or 8 people, but we were working on this SERP program, which really was called Serpent. It should have been called Serpent. And am I in the wrong spot? Absolutely. And we had these things called steering committee meetings. And I remember at one point, and I wrote this in the book. Oh, wait.
The book? Hey.
Shameless plug. Did I bring up the book? I did.
I don't
From
know.
the Zoo to the Wild.
Have you brought it up before?
Your Guide to Entrepreneurial Freedom and Wealth. In this book, we'll talk about the fact that not only did I leave corporate America, but I had to leap into small business ownership. It is filled with gritty, great advice that you're not only going to hear on this podcast, but you can read and keep for yourself. Zoo to the Wild. Go out there and get your own book.
Amen. Tell it, brother.
And now we're back. So he brings me this, and I'm in this SERP thing, and I'm doing these things, and I have to go to steering committee. And at one point, and I wrote this in the book, I came in on Monday morning, and I printed out my Outlook calendar because I use computers and I use a lot of email, and I watch, which I completely ignore, but I use them all the time. And I print out and I have 40 hours of meetings, not 40 hours blocked. I have 40 hours of just meetings. I'm like, let's play a little exercise, Al. CYA, justify your business, beg for money. I start going through this. I put this all in the book. It was CYA, getting status or giving status.
And there's no time in this 40 hours to actually do anything.
I can't do anything. I got to go to these meetings.
Yeah.
And we both established that in corporate America, the best part about meetings is you had to have the pre-meeting to get ready for the meeting where a decision wasn't made, and you'd have to debrief on the meeting. So you have to have another meeting to debrief on what wasn't decided so you can go back and have another meeting. And I sat there and I started looking at myself going, what am I doing? He's right. He pays me a shitload of money and I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm not doing anything that's making the world any better.
So did you quit?
Right there. No. Right. What was that moment? I years ago had been, I took the kids to the zoo here in Atlanta. And Willie B was this really famous gorilla.
Yeah,
do you remember him?
Hearing about when we moved to Atlanta ourselves. It was one of the things that you had to go see was Willie B at the Atlanta Zoo.
And that's when it came to me. I was sitting there, and I started thinking about this. And we moved to Atlanta, and I was strolling the kids through the zoo, which we went to, and it's a zoological park, and you go down to Willie B and see the exhibit, and you go there and you're expecting to see the king of the jungle, this big wild beast, and he's in this 4-walled concrete jungle with red tile and a tire in front of him.
It was pathetic.
And you looked at him and you said, wow, you're the king of the jungle. You're supposed to be this big, incredible, big daddy like me, and here you are sitting in your 4 walls. And I strolled away, and then it hit me. Holy shit, that's me. Big Daddy is sitting in the 4 walls being told what to do. And it came crashing back to me after this conversation and continually going through these meetings. I had to go to these steering committee meetings and report on what I was doing. With no accountability and no responsibility, I would go into these meetings and absolutely get crushed. And in
goes
November,
your soul just being sucked out faster and faster.
Every day.
Yeah.
Faster. And we had a corporate psychologist, and I had to go sit on his couch because obviously I'd done something wrong. And he had stretched me out on that couch and talked to me about this is not how we act, and it's not how we do. And you're like, well, wait a minute, Chris, I thought you had all these edges polished off.
You've been burnished.
Yeah. And but I was getting more and more frustrated and more agitated and less enthused about what I was doing. And I went home, 7:00 at night. My wife was in her office at our house. And I drove up, whipped my tie off, and said, that's it. I'm done. When you married me, I told you by the time I was 35, I was going to own my own business. I was going to do something. And while you didn't like manufacturing, I told you I was going to do it anyway. I'm doing it.
Nice. And so in our next podcast, we're going to talk about how you actually left the corporate zoo.
So it wasn't the next day. Yes. We'll talk about that next
How long
time.
was it? We got to give a little teaser. How long was it?
It took a little while to figure this out because I got the whoa, Sparky. We're sitting in a country club, kids in private school. You're driving a Mercedes. And I told you I wanted to retire. And now you're telling me you want to quit.
Mama wasn't happy.
Mama wasn't real thrilled about that, dude.
All right. I'm looking forward to talking to you about that.
That's awesome.
Okay.
And that's episode 2. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Small Business Safari. Remember, your positive attitude will help you achieve that higher altitude you're looking for in the wild world of small business ownership. And until next time, make it a great day.